I think this is something that most people already know because they understand it through Adam and Christ. And we've always said, is God just making up a principle for Adam and Christ so that everyone is united to Adam in their sin and fallenness, and therefore the punishment, and therefore when you believe everyone's united to Christ because they're both kind of the heads of those quote unquote households. Again, notice that the household of Adam is the entire world. So it's everyone under Adam's headship is the entirety of all his children that follow him, because they're seen as like one household, as though the entire earth is like a household. And then Christ comes in and disrupts that by becoming the new Adam, and we become a part of his world. So his entire world, which is the new heavens, new earth, is his household, and we now become a part of him and his household. And we're broken from the old Adam or whatever. But we see that like what Adam has done, he's done for all of us. I don't need to do the sin of Adam in order to be condemned for Adam's sin because I'm of his household. And so there's nothing, I don't need to repeat it myself individually. Likewise, I don't need to be crucified myself apart from Christ in order to like partake in a crucifixion. Like I've been crucified with Christ because I've been united to him. Christ has been crucified already. And so as my head of household, whatever is true of him is now true of me. Just like whatever is true of Adam is true of me. The punishments, the rewards, whatever they may be from either one is true of me. I don't myself need to do that. Now I do things in response to who I'm in. There's a fruit of being in one or the other, but ultimately like I myself am either in one or the other, one through a natural birth or the second Adam through belief. But because the principle of headship is there to where whatever is of your household, whatever you own, you're the Lord of that, you're the owner of that, and it becomes one body with you. It becomes united with you in the same way that we're united to Christ. Then whatever I do as a head of household, my entire household that is a part of me and subject to me, it has done it through me, whether they're doing it or not. It's kind of like if I'm driving a truck and my whole house is in that truck with me, then they're going wherever I'm going. They don't have to be at the wheel. I'm at the wheel. If I drive off the cliff, they're all going with me. They don't make individual choices. They're in the truck with me. And all the more so if you're talking about a more kind of organic connection to where we're literally united to those who are under us in our household, then that tells me that, my individual members, as long as they're united to me, as long as they're in submission to me, they're one with me, and whatever is true of me is true of them. And so the idea that, like, for instance, an infant has to somehow believe on its own in order to be saved is, I don't think, something that would even come up in the mind of someone who was in the ancient world, especially the biblical world, because they don't see themselves as individuals. I was just reading like the Septuagint of Genesis today when it's talking about Abraham, and it calls the possessions of his household his body, his soma, because it's all one with him. And so what is being said of Abraham? What is true for Abraham? If Abraham is saved, everything that is Abraham is saved, is kind of the idea. And that's the covenant God is making with him. And that's the covenant I would argue that God is making with all his people, that whatever is you is saved if you believe. Now, as kids grow older, or you have a wife that may not believe, or whatever it may be, they can depart from you in the same way that we departed from Adam and we linked ourselves to Christ. Well, you can also depart from an individual and become a separate individual that now does have to believe on his own. And let's say he doesn't now. So he links himself to a different head or whatever. But all that is me is still me. And all that is me is saved if I believe. And that includes my household. That person is just becoming something other than my household when they do that. So my point to be made is just that, like, this whole argument he's making is a misunderstanding of what it means to be in a federal head or unified in the same way that we're unified to Christ or Adam. You really do have to make an argument as a Baptist that God's making up rules that he doesn't actually believe and apply across the board. He's just making up rules for Adam and Jesus. And the problem with that, to me, is that will mess with God's immutability, because this has to do with justice. Both issues are issues of justice. If I'm blamed for Adam, but I'm a different individual than Adam, then that's not right. That's not just. If I'm saved with Christ, but I'm a different individual from Christ, that's wrong. I shouldn't receive this reward. I didn't do it. So, likewise, and ultimately I say, what can answer this question is you have to go to the Bible to see if God does treat across the board households as a part of their individual heads, so that he either gives the reward or punishment to children that the heads are getting for those sins, or the heads are getting for their belief. And across the board, we see that he has favor with Noah, and therefore all Noah's family is saved. He has favor with Rahab. Rahab believes. There's nothing that says her household believes, and yet the whole household is saved. Likewise, we have Korah, who sins and rebels against God, and what goes down with him? All his tent, all his animals, his wife, and all his children, and it includes the infants, the Tophim. So they go down with him. And so we see this over and over again, that across the board, God treats households this way. Then we get to the new covenant with Jesus, and 1/3 of those who are blessed by being healed. And healing in the Gospels, I would argue, is a picture of salvation. It's part of the new world. It's the work of the Messiah to give sight to the blind and give hearing to the deaf, and the lame walk, and the dead rise, and all that sort of thing. That's a part of the new world that he's giving to people in healing. And 1/3 of them those healings happen to people who do not exercise faith on their own. It's someone else that is the head of the household, someone else who's taken charge of them to where they're under the care of that person, who then it's that person who must believe. And based on their faith, the person under their care, who is now united to them as one, also receives that salvation. And so I would argue that this is not an Old New Testament issue. It can't be, because it's part of the immutability of God, to where God's justice demands that he not just see it with Adam and Christ, but everyone. It's a principle of justice for everyone, so that he is the God who delivers the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation, but giving loving kindness to thousands of those, to those and their children who love me and keep my commandments. So that's the idea, that ultimately, like, there is a continuity between fathers and children, or households, and masters and servants, or whatever you want to say, that does not demand the individualism that is being assumed, not taught in the Bible, assumed by the Baptist position.